back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. Today you got Bryan, along with Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, today we're going to continue on this series we've been working through. Hopefully you've heard some of them already, but we're talking about our core values. And the core value we're going to sort of dig into today is create solutions. We look for solutions instead of worrying about the challenge itself. We never settle for quick fixes and solve problems the right way, even if it takes longer. So let's just take a few minutes and unpack that one, figure out what it means to each of us and what we think it might mean for our folks.
Well, this is back again, tying to some other things, but creating solutions, big picture, when we're hired, we're a solution from the hill needs to be flat to the road needs to be repaved. Big level, we're always hired for a solution. That's how this job in this industry is.
Yeah, everything started with a problem, right?
Yep.
If there weren't a problem or some other need, we wouldn't be on the site.
Exactly. Then we'll dig a little bit deeper into it, into the level of this work has been done in a very similar fashion for a very long time. You load something, you haul it, you move it, you do something else on the other end. And so in that level, as I joke, no one's reinvented the wheel in construction in a very long time. The pipe still has to go in the ground. It still has to have fall to the other end. The pad still has to be level. Certain factors are...
Water still runs downhill.
Every time, and so does other stuff, but we won't go into that. Unless it's sitting in a pond in someone's backyard. That's a different story. It doesn't run downhill too well. But then it's into the smaller solutions, the smaller tweaks, the adjustments that have to be made to try and be more productive and try and get the job done more efficiently. That's where this really boils down to, of trying to create ways of getting things done that, we want to question the norms and try new things, and at the same time, try and find new ways of doing things that help everyone involved. There's types of products we use that are different and new. Geostorage comes into play there. That's not something we do, but it's a product that we use that sometimes allows us to get the jobs as a solution. It's a cost-saving solution. And also sometimes it just fits better on a job site. 2, trying new pieces of equipment for the team. We, just in the last couple of months, things off the top of my head were we used a grinder wheel to rip up rock versus a hammer. And we've bought an NCON attachment for a track hoe to see how that works. We don't have answers on if those solutions were concrete successes yet because they just started them, but we have to try them because if they can make anyone's job easier, that is what we're trying to do. Then the other side of solutions is actually trying to look at a job site and figure out what is the best way to get something done. We had a job years ago and we were hauling 2 types of products in rock trucks, and we were doing it separately on the job because it was 2 different products. But someone looked at it from within the team and they go, hey, what if we did a round robin scenario where we hauled it one way, dumped it, and then hauled the other material the other way, and we were able to all of a sudden beat the schedule on the job, and we were able to do it more effectively, reduced time and overtime that people were going to have to spend on the job in order for us before to get it done. And it also saved fuel and allowed us to have a successful project that up until that point, that project was on the teetering point, shall we say, of the success level. But someone looking at it with a fresh set of eyes and being willing to take a fresh approach to it, that's really how we boil back down to, creating those solutions internally, small little ones. It might be putting a new attachment on a machine to something on a much bigger level. It's just trying to save time or loading a truck a different way, those kind of factors.
Yeah, for me, I mean, and you hit the nail on the head there. A lot of times conventional wisdom would say this is the way you do things, right? There's a specific way to get it done, and that's the way it's always been done, so that's the way we're going to do it today, and that's the way we'll do it again tomorrow. And the problem with that is if you never pick your head up, if you never open up your eyes to the idea that there might be another way to do something, then you always get the same result. And so, you're talking about a specific scenario there. Schedule said we move material this direction, we move material that direction. Nobody ever said like, well, there might be a different way. Then we'd still be stuck on the side of a hill somewhere, moving stuff one direction at a time, waiting for the next truck to be available. So I think that's a huge component of creating solutions, and really what we've talked about it before. Like so many of our core values tie together, right? But in almost all of them, we're looking for people to be sort of field engineers, right? We got a lot of examples of good guys in our organization who do that. They got a set of plans, and I'm not suggesting that they throw it out the window when they show up on site, because that would, there's certain things
that'd be against the rules of conservation. So you're gonna have to keep them on site, please.
Keep the plans on site. Yeah. But that being said, in the field, in the moment, reevaluate the circumstances. Is there a way to accomplish this in a manner that makes sense for our client, that saves them money, maybe is more profitable for us in the long run, and accomplishes their need, solves their problem?
Well, I'll jump back in here because there's another example that like actually went low tech with this type of scenario, because some of the stuff we said is kind of new tech or whatever you want to call it. We were doing a job, we were moving material, and we were losing tires on our rock trucks just at a unprecedented speed, just having issues with blown tires. And I'm not sure who did it at this point. It's been years, but someone decided to grab one of the guys that was working in the shop, a young kid. I think he was just old enough to work. And when they got done every day, he would walk the haul road and look for sharp objects. And something very basic. I mean, it took him an hour. He walked the haul road. All of a sudden, our damage to our tires was cut down by 75%, give or take. Small thing. Wasn't some new magical bullet, but it was just re-looking at it and saying, how can we do this differently? What can we do to try and save on our damage? And that was, so it's not some pie in the sky. And we want those too. You want to look at all different things, but sometimes it's, just doing something very small makes a big difference.
Yeah. A couple things, you guys trigger me to think things. One of them is Bryan in one of the videos, I'm not sure which one of the interviews that you had. And you said one of the things you liked was that we disregard, for the most part, what other people think and just approach it to get to a solution. You didn't have the second half of that. I don't remember what the second half of the quote was, but the gist of it was one of the things you really enjoyed about Berg was there's a disregard for what the historical answer is. It doesn't mean it can't be the answer, but it means you can step back and look at it and see, is that still the best answer in this very specific spot? So that comes to mind, number one, that it is such a core to who we are. Another thing that comes to mind is you were talking about the plans and the plans are what they are. Ford and I often say now that at best you get 90% drawings, and that's on a really good day. But from a solution standpoint, they give you a print, and the print is completely accurate most of the time in what is there right now, right? They give you existing, and that's accurate. And they give you what they want you to build, and that's accurate. And it's our job to get from what is there to what they want. And the plans are a guide to get us there, but they require our laborers, our operators, and our foremen and superintendents to get to that end, because it's not exactly what's on the print. That's the whole reason that you're required to do red line drawings. It's the whole reason that you need as-builts, is because what the engineer drew when it was a farm field or woods or another building that got taken down, and what they want, those drawings were probably correct. But how you got there is not necessarily what's in the plans that are approved for construction, because you can't get there on a straight line that way. And so it really requires a lot, and it speaks to who we are as an industry and why create solutions was so important to us. But it also ties directly again back to the act as an owner that we already talked about with the farmer mentality, that it requires you to just own it and look at what the best possible solution is and get yourself to that end incrementally in pieces. one of the things Ford will say it now and again and other people say it about how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. And it applies here. You don't have to find the solution to get you to the final point. You have to find the solution to get you to where you can be. That's the best possible point you can be to end your day today and start tomorrow. And then you do that again tomorrow and again tomorrow and again tomorrow. And pretty soon, if you link all them together, you get to the end of the project and you have a solution. And you got there with 180 days worth of solutions. And that's a successful project.
Yeah, and I think it ties back to, not all times on a job is it going to be fun. It's not always going to be, easy. We always have the conversation when we're amongst peers that all the good ground from the guys in the 60s and 70s is gone. The flat fields that they want to just turn into something, they're already used up. The projects we're working on now always have some kind of challenge per se. And even within that, we always talk about when I was running a field crew, if someone called me with a challenge, I didn't care. The problem already had happened, whether it was a truck didn't show up or whatever it was. We always wanted this. What I would love to hear from someone is, hey, this happened. I figured out to do this, this, or this. And if maybe they're looking for some guidance or maybe they needed me to get a resource for them or whatever it was, the solution was the important and what made that person valuable because they figured out on the fly how to make that adjustment. You call for 8 trucks for a day and 4 trucks show up, 4 didn't show up, whatever happened, who knows at this point. You decided, all right, I got 3 guys here. I'm going to go do something else on the job because I only need one person doing that. You just have to be, I think, malleable and willing to adjust are 2 very important characteristics of people in the construction industry, especially when they're actually constructing something because nothing ever goes exactly to plan.
Yeah. And, when Ford says about people finding solutions, it's such you combine that with our desire to have our field staff be autonomous. And it puts me personally in a really uncomfortable spot at times because we often say everybody seems to know everything, right? I don't know how a team working in Lebanon on a paving project knows what happened that day on a team working on a commercial job in Lansdale. But they do, which speaks to another one of our things, which is building relationships. Obviously, they have a relationship because somebody on that crew talked to somebody on the other crew. It's the only way they could know. But eventually, that'll usually work its way back to Ford, Ford will then call me and say, hey, did you hear about this problem? Which is Ford says he loves to hear solutions, but there's nothing more unnerving than when Ford asked me a question of, hey, do you know about this problem? And I don't even know there was a problem. And what I had to get really used to was that we had built a team good enough that they were solving the problem. So Ford's on a time delay. So Ford heard about a problem that had already occurred, that had already been solved, that I didn't hear about the problem because they solved the problem, which is exactly what we asked them to do. And then he says to me, did you hear about this problem? Which I did not. So then I call them and say, hey, was there a problem? They said, yeah, but we found a solution. And I say, well, that's great. But now I'm checking up on them to find the solution so I can tell Ford the solution. And so it creates this odd thing that we've really built a successful team who can, on their own, encounter a problem and find a solution in many cases. And it's amazing. And it's great. But from a growing standpoint, it takes Ford and I time to adjust to that because we used to have to be the ones solving the problem. And the more we don't have to solve the problem, the more successful we can be as a company because the more we can work to go find more work, more opportunity. But it also took for us to become comfortable with the fact that we don't instantaneously know the problem exists or that a solution occurred. And so it makes us uncomfortable at the same time. So that's an interesting sidebar to the solutions idea that we built a team that creates solutions, which created a problem that Ford and I have to create a solution for, which is to trust that the team is doing what we need them to do on a daily basis. And that's hard to do. It's hard to give up that piece. It's something Ford's been really successful at, but something that I have to work at.
Yeah, and a big part of that, is one of our other core values, right? Acting as an owner. So we get guys acting as owners, creating solutions, taking action on those solutions. And truthfully, it's better for our team because there's less downtime, less loss of production, and we get things moving back in the right direction. Sometimes the communication piece is the part that lags, but the solution is what was important in the first place. So, it is in like some of the examples that we've talked about here. What's interesting to me is that those solutions seem to come from every different level of the organization, right? Sometimes it's our superintendent coming up with a solution. They have a big picture vision. Sometimes it's labor. Sometimes, we've got some examples of our office staff internally coming up with some procedural solutions that make things easier so that we can get some processes in place so that things operate more efficiently. So I think it's important, just to stress that too, like, create solutions. Well, that means we got to be open to hearing solutions from every layer of the organization.
Yeah, and I think that actually is something we always want to talk about. Sometimes we talked about it other times, but like, as technology changes and new and better or possibly better options come available to help reduce redundancy, to help reduce paperwork for people, we're constantly trying them. And sometimes the people that have to be involved with that process, that's a challenge because they learned something new and then that unfortunately didn't work out and we had to go to the next product or the next solution, as this Create Solutions is. But it's all, I guess the part always to step back is that it's all in an effort to get better at what we're doing. And so we might go through 3 different products and you have 3 apps on your phone or something like that. And we get a new one that works better, that works for some other reason, better solution for the company. But it's to get better every day. And so the new product, some of them we test, some of them we have to try out right away. But whatever it is, it's always with the same goal in mind of creating a solution that makes it easier for everyone to get their job done.
I think that's a great point. The solution that we created yesterday might not be the solution to tomorrow's problem.
Yeah, and it's, funny you bring that up. And we're working through some stuff right now as we look for some technology solutions that we're trying to simplify some of our processes. And we create solutions. We make it a core value. We talk about it. We're sitting here doing a podcast. And for 1 second, I didn't think about some of the solutions that we're trying to make internally in the office to create technology pieces or software pieces to solve some problems we have, to simplify data entry or to clean up some data inconsistencies. I didn't even think about it because I was so focused on creating solutions being a field piece. But there's just as much opportunity in our processes that make everything go, and we apply the same rules there, where we continually are looking for a better option that will yield a more accurate or a better answer.
So just, one more thought on that before we start to wrap this up. It's, how do we encourage that type of behavior? So I gotta imagine that we've got some folks inside of our organization who feel like it's not their place to speak up when there's a solution or when they might have an idea. They're waiting for somebody who's been put in a spot of responsibility or someone who's in charge, so to speak, to have a solution. How do we encourage that growth, that behavior?
Let's go back to build a relationship.
Man, these things do all tie together.
They do, but this is why it is, because if you have a relationship with someone that might be able to make your idea come to fruition and you are in good standing with them, they're going to listen to you. If you're just going to come up with solutions that aren't, someone doesn't trust your word on something, it might not happen. And it might be a good solution, but it's all about, if you don't have the relationship with the person that you want to discuss that option with, it's going to be very difficult to get that to happen. And so it's always about the relationship that, I had this idea. Can we try it? Most people will say, hey, let's try it for an hour, try it for a day, whatever the scenario is and whatever the solution you're creating or you think is creating. And it might fail, but it's more about, and a lot of times it's like, hey, I think this might work. Can I go try this for a little bit of time? And they'll watch you and see if that is a better option for something. But just going off on your own without communicating to someone what you're trying, that creates challenges, because then if someone had told someone to do something, it creates a scenario where they feel if you did not communicate and they don't have trust with you in that relationship, they would have concern that you're not following what's trying to get done.
I would go back to a different one of our core values, which is we really want people to act as an owner. So what should make you feel like that it is you, if you think you have an answer, that have the freedom and the right and the responsibility to try and get that at least seen and discussed, is that we want you to act like an owner. We've made it one of our core values. We believe it's one of the most important things we have to do, is have each person be able to tell us that thought, because they are an owner.
That's a great place to wrap it up, I think. We want everyone to own their piece. We want to treat each other with mutual respect and be open to the idea that solutions come from every layer. Fantastic. Thanks again for joining us. Hope you've gotten something out of this, and look forward to having you back when we talk about the next one.